It's just the Glazers and they are the root problem. And rival fans will be like, no, it's an excuse. But any problem we have at the club right now, whether it's directly or indirectly, is to do with them. And it's, you know how frustrating it is. It's soul destroying, isn't it?
Hello and welcome back to the Content Podcast. I just want to start by saying sorry. You can clearly tell that I haven't had a haircut. So Reese, my barber, I will be getting in contact with you tomorrow. But luckily, thankfully, my guest obviously looks a lot better than I do. So the standards have been obviously raised just a little bit, clearly, as you can tell by the beard and the haircut. But thankfully, as I say, we're joined by not only someone who's brilliant in terms of content creation, she's also a Manchester United fan, which, as I always say, definitely helps the cause. I'm with Hannah Nicholls, but I think a lot of people will know her as United Hannah, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you off the back of an unconvincing win, but nevertheless a win for Manchester United?
Well, as you're saying, Neil, a win's a win. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm certainly a lot better, thankfully, that we can chat about Manchester United, because there is a lot to delve into, isn't there, really? On the face value, we obviously got the win, which is the most important thing, but I still think there's a few questions to answer there, isn't there?
100%. We could talk for hours about anything Manchester United. Anything at the moment, we could be here for hours.
Exactly. So I won't take too long of your time, but like you said, I think we could probably spend all day speaking about all the problems going on at United and all that stuff. But let's just talk about the Sheffield United game. Of course, that happened this weekend. As I said just a little bit ago, it was a win, which of course is the most important thing in football. It's getting the 3 points or the victory, whatever that capacity will look like. But as I say, it wasn't exactly a vintage Manchester United performance. So take us through your thoughts exactly on what exactly happened over the weekend.
My first thoughts were when the lineup came out. I was just like, every time that lineup comes out at the moment, and I'm sure you agree, it's just, what combination of the back line are you going to get this week? What combination of the midfield are you going to get this week? And I'll be real, I know he saved our skin 2 weeks ago, but when I saw Scott McTominay on there, I was like, first of all, why? I knew the second he saved us in that game, he would get starts and he would get more minutes. And before that game, he's like McGhost. He has something like, I think one game he had something like 10 touches when he's in the midfield. So I just don't understand. I'm a big fan of Eric Ten Hag, but I just don't understand these chopping and changes of, the starting 11 all the time. And of course, we're actually riddled with injury, and it is a dire situation. And I do appreciate in some ways it is going to chop and change. But that back line, I think in 8 games we've had 7 different combinations. Like, no wonder we're leaking goals. Like, I was just watching us last night. Like, we are rubbish. We are rubbish. I think there were certain aspects of the game that were, good and are promising, but all in all, I don't feel very confident going into a Copenhagen game, which we have to win. I don't feel confident going into the derby, which we should be winning. I don't feel confident in the Carabao Cup knockout with Newcastle. So I'm a really positive fan of Neil, but just watching us last night, where's our plan? Where's the chemistry between the players? Everything we had last season seems to have just dissipated this season. And obviously there's a number of different reasons why. Like, I think a lot of rival fans like to say you can't blame, what's going off away from the pitch to blame, but it's going to have an effect. It's going to get to the point where the staff know it, the players know it, the manager knows it, and we're just constantly shrouded in this like negativity. So I'm not surprised it's had an effect, but it's so frustrating to see. Obviously we'll get into the ownership, but it's just the Glazers and they are the root problem. And rival fans will be like, no, it's an excuse. But any problem we have at the club right now, whether it's directly or indirectly, is to do with them. And it's, how frustrating it is. It's soul destroying, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. I think that's the perfect way to really summarize it. Do you know what it is? I think, look, win, draw, or lose, we're Manchester United fans, and we're obviously always going to support our team. But don't you think there's just like this feeling of being dejected at the moment? The game yesterday, of course, with the horrible passing of one of the legends of the football club in Sir Bobby Charlton. In a weird way, I almost thought to myself, although the tragic news dropped just before a match day, which isn't going to help anyone in terms of preparation, it was such a heartbreaking thing to go through. But, that can almost be a driving force for some players. And I almost thought to myself, okay, well, with, probably the biggest legend in the club's history sadly passing away, this could really be something that kicks the players up the backside, and really, as I say, emphasize the performance and stuff. But, that first half particularly, it wasn't, as I say, textbook old school United, was it? But look, as we know, we got the win in the end, and that's the main thing. We can't have too many complaints there. But, you've mentioned obviously a lot of stuff going on with the club at the moment. Despite the fact that Erik ten Hag was really successful in his first season last year, it's a bit of a shame what's going on now. But as the season's progress, we're what, around about 10 games into the season now. What would you want to change in order for Man United to have a really successful season? What do you think it is in terms of the on the pitch stuff, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, I know I mentioned it before, and as a fan, I try not to use it as an excuse because I always think we should have, a 22, 23-man squad that is strong enough no matter what combination we send out. But obviously, with injuries, I think that's a massive issue. So I'd like to see our medical staff pull a finger out and actually make sure these, the players are recovering well, they're training they're not being pushed. I think that's a massive thing because even if we do, which I think we will, crash out of some competitions, we need to be focusing on the Premier League and having a really strong finish because, as you know, Anil, if we finish anything less than third and if we don't win a cup, which is likely, it's a regression. It is. We can look at it anyway, but it is a regression. So I think the team they need to dig deep. Last season, God, our mentality was incredible. How many last-minute winners did we get last season? How many substitutes came on and just completely changed the game? And that is what we're missing this season. How many times have we scored and then conceded within less than 5 minutes? On multiple occasions. I think there was something crazy like 9 occasions within 5 minutes this season we've conceded. And that is shocking. That needs to be sorted out ASAP. That's probably up there in my top 3 things that we need to stop doing, because watching that game last night, that last 10 minutes was horrible because I just think, God, we've scored a goal. What's coming next? We'll go from 3 points to 1 point. So I just think the players need to remember who they're playing for. Like, obviously, we've got all the issues with Jadon Sancho, and I think it is evident some of these players, for lack of a better word, are divas. And it's only watching things like the Beckham documentary, when you see how they used to be and the mentality they used to have, it's changed so much, and we've fallen from grace a huge amount. And I see what Erik ten Hag's doing in regards to, he's like getting them to eat together, just small things, but they need to bring that onto the pitch. Remember, we actually do play for Manchester United, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. That's the thing, isn't it? It's just so disheartening, as I say, because obviously, we had not a perfect season last season by any stretch of the imagination. There were, of course, 1 or 2 matches, shall we say, especially the Anfield game. But, less said about that, the better. But, there was certainly, a lot of positives to take into this season.
Yeah.
I remember when I was on TalkSport and I got asked, what are Man United's aspirations this season going into the new one? And I said, by logic, by the very essence of a project, it should be breaking into the top 2. It should be, getting to the latter stages of the Champions League and just making the steps in the right direction. But now it's at that stage where who knows what's going to happen. So obviously, I'm sure you were in a very similar position to I was in terms of a hope, should we say, for the season. But with everything that's going on, which, as you say, we'll get into very shortly, and the start to the season, with the injuries and the so many questions around the club at the moment, what are your hopes now then for the season in terms of a league position, trophies, if any at all? What would you want to see in a realistic term Manchester United end up with at the end of this season?
So before we drew Newcastle in the Carabao Cup knockout, I'd have been like, we are retaining our Carabao Cup title, but I do think with the form they're in and the form we're in, we'll be knocked out of that, unfortunately. So for me, Anil, if I'm being really realistic and hopeful still, I would say top 5. And now it's top 5. I don't think there's any excuse to not be getting Champions League. And the frustrating thing is we're in Champions League this season and we're on 0 points, 3 games in. So I'm not saying right now that we deserve it, but I think if we've been knocked out of all the other competitions, why are we not getting top 5? Like I say, it's another space opened up. The Champions League's changing. So I'm going to say top 5, top 5, but it's hard to say. And it's harder for us to envision that when, teams around us, God, have got so much better. Even Chelsea, they're looking better. I hate to say it. They look so much better than they did last season, and I didn't think they would be better as quick, if that makes sense. So all of the other teams around us want the same thing. So it's more competitive than ever. So if we can get top 5, great, but it's going to be hard, isn't it? It's going to be
Yeah,
hard.
I wouldn't hold my breath if I was you. I think I'm the same. I think
Top 10.
yeah, top 10. I think we'll take that at this stage, won't we? But no, I think I always say when I do podcasts or live streams or anything like that, you know, if you haven't got hope, you haven't got anything in life, have you? So we'll hopefully anyway, as I say, get to where we need to get to eventually. But you know, we've mentioned it a couple of times already. It's very difficult to get away from at this moment in time, not just being a Man United fan, but you know, just being in the media. And I'm sure your timeline is very similar to mine in terms of constant updates from accounts I've never even heard of before, giving me false hope, but then also dragging me right back down with other journalists and all that kind of stuff. So I'm of course talking about the debacle that is the takeover at the moment. You know, it's approaching now, if I'm not mistaken, a year since we got the official news that the Glazers were, at least at the very minimum, interested in selling the football club. But as we've progressed, it almost feels like we're having, you know, more questions than answers, as seems to be a common theme for Manchester United this season. But let's go through the takeover. Let's go through, obviously, you know, your thoughts and your opinions. Obviously, it looks at this stage now that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is the leading contender in this. What are your thoughts? Because as you know yourself, you know, the fan base is very divided when it comes to the takeover stuff. So without further ado, take it away. What are your thoughts on this whole mess at the moment?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, Anil. I was the side of the fan base that was really, really pro Qatar. And, you know, again, it might be controversial, but I was at the point where we've regressed, like I said, so much in the last few years. And I know we all go, oh, City, you know, oil merchants, but you look at like Newcastle, they just had, you know, investment. And how well do they look? Feel like they run so well. They're buying the right players. They're, you know, the director of football, all of the things that we don't have. People in our positions at Manchester United in that position are shit, for lack of a better word. They're rubbish. I mean, they're handing out 350 grand a week contracts, and we wonder why, oh, we can't afford to buy, for example, Amrabat, we have to scrape for a loan. So when I got that notification last week and it was like official, I was like, honestly, it felt, you'll know this, it felt like I've been punched. I was like, oh my God. So yeah, it's really, like I say, I'm quite a positive fan, but you wouldn't believe it. But it is really hard right now to be like, okay, come on, Jim Ratcliffe, because for me, that's Glazers 2.0. Cut and dry it is, the Glazers are staying. And that's not what the United fans want. The United fans, you know, are divided in multiple areas at the moment. But I think the one thing is that we all can agree on is Glazers out. Like I've never heard one person that isn't a Manchester City fan or a Liverpool fan saying Glazers in ever. And for me, the fact that, I mean, it's not even got a 50% stake, it'd be 25. And it's like, Jim, we know you've got the money. Like, was the offer to buy Chelsea? Was it Chelsea? Yeah, exactly. Like, we know you've got the money, and if you know you're such a big Manchester United fan, why don't you want full control? Why don't you want full ownership? I think he's put that bid in because A, he can, and B, he knows that the Glazers actually they'll want to stay. So of course they'll be like, oh yeah, we'll get your 25% and we can stay. Whereas what Sheikh Jassim offered, obviously for us, was incredible. Like, you know, when that offer was itemized, like the investment and clearing the debt, that's what we need, and it's really upsetting that that's just gone. Like it's like I say, I'm just devastated by it this week. The news that's come out this week has been rubbish. The only thing I can hope is and again, it's hard to believe what's true and what isn't, especially at like the early stage and, you know, potentially having Jim Ratcliffe, but you know, the directors of footballs he's looking at are obviously much better. And it's kind of one of them, and like I'm sure you might agree, like I'll believe it when I see it. Like if he can come in and make these amazing changes and make a big difference, oh my God, amazing, I'll eat my words, I'll get on my knees and beg for forgiveness. But right now the Glazers are still there, so to me it's the same issue. It's, yeah, we might have a bit more money, but he's gonna make the same mistakes that they have when they're still having a say in what we do. So to me it just seems stupid, it seems pointless, because I mean, I'll admit it's not the money that the Glazers spend that's the issue. Like they do buy us players, they've bought us players, but it's who they buy, the contracts they're offering, the state of the stadium, like everything else is just crap. So it's all, like I said before, consequential of years and years and years of being under a family who have taken so much from the club and not really put a lot back in. So I hope his priority is getting better staff and the stadium. That's really important, I think. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard, isn't it? Hard to
yeah.
be like, let's go.
I wish we could, but unfortunately, we don't have many things to be punching the air in celebration with at the moment. But it was it's funny that you say all that stuff about Ratcliffe. I think you've basically just said everything that I totally agree with when it comes to this kind of stuff, which is probably quite boring for the fan. I think they want to see us, argue and tell each other we're so
Oh,
great.
wait for him. Yes, bring him in.
Exactly, but I think this stuff with Jim Ratcliffe, I had a clip that was posted up in the week that I've got a lot of stick for at the moment, and I'm probably just about dried off now, thankfully. And it was basically saying virtually what you were just saying there in terms of, we know that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's got the money. Why is he not, going for more of the club? And then so many people were saying it's not how it works, all this and all that. But then the information starts to unravel, doesn't it? And then you understand that he's very open, or at least willing to allow Joel Glazer to be a part of his 25%, obviously the football operations. So if these things don't scream in your face of exactly what this is going to entail, then I don't think anything will. But
It's a
big red
flag.
flags, big red flags, exactly that. And I think we've got so many big red flags now. It's honestly like it's like the start of an F1 race, isn't it? The amount of flags that we're seeing at this moment in time, it's just ridiculous. But look, unfortunately, we can't really do anything about it. We've just got to sit here and just hope for the best, like you say. But at the end of the day, it's Manchester United. We always have that hope, as I keep saying. Hopefully, anyway, things will turn around. And like you said yourself, I'll be the first person to come on a podcast or live or on air at work, anything like that, and I'll hold my hands up and say, "Do you know what? I got it completely wrong about Sir Jim." But unfortunately, something tells me that that's not quite going to happen. And obviously, look, I mentioned just there, in terms of me putting that video out, and obviously, a lot of heat off the back of it. It was a controversial opinion to most people, and another controversial opinion that I have is that I'm just not sold on Bruno Fernandes. So what I want to ask you now is, what are your controversial opinions about Manchester United? Have you seen that picture on Twitter, by the way, of the cartoon with loads of knives
Yeah,
around
with
his
the
face?
knife.
So,
Yeah.
so put yourself in that position. What is going to get you that feedback? What is your most controversial opinion when it comes to Manchester United?
You know what's so funny, Adele? My things that I was starting to think at the end of last season and I would have been like crucified for now aren't even unpopular opinions. So, for example, Bruno. I mean, thing is, I'm a really big fan of Bruno, but it's got to the point even now, like I say, an optimistic fan where I'm like, bench him and give someone else a chance. Like he was great playing grenade ball last night. Honestly, I was watching it and I was like, what is this man doing? So it's benching players like Rashford. I mean, I think we look better without Casemiro. He had such a good start to last season, and then he just started to trail off. And then you see how he's been the start of this season. You see how he's been when he played for Brazil the other night. I don't think that's a Manchester United issue with him. And I hate to like pick out players, but we've got so many divas on our bench. We've got so many divas on our starting 11. And I'm like tired of hearing these stories, Anthony, Sancho, Mason Greenwood. Like, can we just get some proper footballers
Just
who aren't
normal people.
who are just shitty people? So my controversial opinions, like I say, they're not that controversial anymore. And I'm at the point where I feel like, the fan base are so divided about certain things, but we'll always it will always come back to like what it's just, I think for a lot of older fans as well, and like I started watching football like really just when Fergie was like leaving basically, so I kind of watched ever since it's gone shit. But I think especially for the older fans, I mean, it's great that they've lived obviously like the treble and all that good stuff, but how upsetting it must, well, it is and must be to people that's like saw it in real life to then see how we are now. Like, why are we struggling against a team that's definitely going to get relegated? Do you know what I mean? With like it, I know teams show up against us, but last night, how I was just like, we should be putting four past them. We should keep a clean sheet. And I know that penalty, but it's just annoying, isn't it? It's just a big fat mess.
Yeah, exactly that. I think, we always try to be very articulate, but I think big fat mess is exactly how we should describe it.
There's
Exactly
no
that.
like professional way to say it. Like
Exactly.
it's a
Just
mess.
exactly. That's what we're here to do as well. No fanciness, just straight to the point. That is exactly what we like to see around here. But we've spoke a little bit obviously about controversial opinions and stuff like that, and obviously the heat that you can get off social media. I don't have to tell you, just some of the ridiculous responses and things you can get when you're just quite literally supporting the team that you love, right? So
Oh,
before we get into that kind of stuff, before we get into how you deal with that, all of that kind of stuff, because I think it is a really important conversation to have, right? How
yeah.
did you first get into content creation? How did you realize at the end of the day that it was more than just, watching Man United? You wanted to, put your knowledge basically to the test, and really put yourself out there. How did everything come about for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. It's all quite recent, to be honest. It's all been within the past, I'd say, year. But for me, I think there's a massive gap in the market with female opinions. I really do. And now we'll touch on this, but now I'm in it, I kind of see why a lot of women don't would be intimidated by it. So for me, it was just a sense of I know I've got somewhat good ball knowledge, and I am confident in front of a camera. So for me, it was just kind of putting two and two together, and it started off a few months ago as a hobby, and it's grown quite quickly, and I'm very blessed. I've had some incredible opportunities like very early on. But yeah, I think it was for me just like want to do it for the girls, to be honest, because my Twitter feed is like full of Twitter tacticos and like different like male like pundits, which is amazing. Like there's so many fabulous pundits and like hosts and things like that, but for me it was just like I want to kind of show other women that you can do it. There's a space for you guys, and now I'm in it. I'm glad, but you have to have a thick skin for sure.
I think that is probably the understatement of the podcast so far, isn't it? To
Yeah,
have thick
it
skin.
is.
But look, I think it's brilliant. This was not the only reason, but one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on, because I think it's so brave of any female to pick up a camera and talk about football in a very dominated industry by the opposite sex, of course. I think again that's an understatement to say the least. But I think it's absolutely brilliant. And if I can even give just a small platform to anyone trying to break barriers, I think that is what it's all about at the end of the day. But in terms of obviously all the stuff that you have had to deal with, I don't want to talk about the ins and outs because you have
Of
to deal with
course.
that enough. But what do you do in terms of like a defense mechanism? What is it that you are able to do with yourself that will allow you not to be sidetracked by all the stupid things that are out there in terms of obviously responses from people? And just before I let you answer, isn't it so funny how the people who say stuff to you, say how deluded you are, or get back to the kitchen? I'm sure that's probably one
That's
you've
a
had a
good
lot.
one,
Yeah,
classic.
that's a classic one. You know, and it's always the people that say this stuff, but they follow you. How does that make any sense whatsoever? If you don't want to hear my stuff, just block me, But take us through it. How do you cope with all that stuff?
Do you know what? Every day is different, and I'm still learning loads about this because, like I say, I'm still quite new. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some days I wake up and the first thing I see is a negative comment or a DM or something. And I've got a lot better at it. Sometimes I do snap, like I think any human does, but I think it's really important. Like a lot of the time, 99% of the time now, I just look at it and I think, right, okay, well, you're just like kind of deflecting your sadness onto me, and I've got to the point where I have to look at it as I feel really sorry for that person because they're probably either 15 or 60 sat in their mom's box room, and they would only dream of being able to put themselves out there. So I know now I've done it, and like I speak to a lot of different creators and I've done different shows. Like I know how hard it is to put yourself out there, even as a male. Like in fact, as a male, I think there's just as much heat because you have one controversial opinion, or if you get a fact wrong or a stat wrong, God, they come for you. Like it's like they sit there and wait. So for me, I just have to like take a step back. I always like I'm like this with work, like never send like an email when you're annoyed, or don't do it off a certain emotion. Like if I saw something now and I was upset, like I have to be like, right, sit with it for an hour. If you still feel the same in an hour, deal with that then. But in 10 minutes time, I'm just like, oh, they're just jealous. And, they're either coming from men that are insecure or they're just jealous of my ball knowledge. So it's a really good question. I think it is some days, like I say, it affects me more than other days. But at the end of the day, I have to remind myself I've been doing this for a few months and I've had incredible opportunities. I love it. Like it's a passion of mine, and these kind of people put me off for so long. So I just think, why am I going to let them put me off even more? Because with a bit of a graft and a bit of putting yourself out there and determination, like you can do some amazing things. And it comes back to I'm doing this for the girls. Like even if girls do see, I've put a tweet and there's a negative comment underneath, well, look at all the lovely ones. Look at all the people that are great and are supportive. Because for every knob, there's 10 lovely people. And unfortunately, like in anything, negativity can always kind of come through more. Like, I see people respond to negative comments and not positive ones. And I just think have that balance. You know, you can have days where it upsets you. Of course, you're a human being, but respond to that positive stuff, because those people that support you, you know, they don't even know you and they like your content, they like your TikToks, they like seeing your tweets, they like your opinions. Like last night I didn't put like a post-match analysis up and I got loads of messages asking for one. So that always brings me like back down to the positive side of this. And like at the end of the day, I'm doing it because I enjoy it. People can say what they want to say, of course, but it's like in life, people are going to be unhappy whatever you do. You know, you could try and please every single person, but there's always going to be someone that's like, you're a shit person. It's like, that's fine. I know that I'm not. I know that I'm a proper Manchester United fan and I like football, and you know, I don't know everything there is to know about football, of course not, but I'm learning a lot. And it's definitely, in a way, the people that are negative help me out, because they're the people that give me that kick up the ass to get up and carry on, if that makes sense. Because I'm like, no, I'm not going to stop because a guy with a faceless account has said I'm ugly, or I don't know what I'm talking about. So I think like anything in life, I know it's just, actually I enjoy this, I'm not doing this for you. If I was doing it for you, I'd have stopped, or I would never have started, you know, initially. So it's a great question. I just think it's, you have to rise above it. And like I say, easy said than done. Some days I'm like, but other time I'm like, okay, that's your opinion, you're allowed it. And I think if you're going into content creation, like that is something you do have to bear in mind. Like, I know it sounds like blunt, but you are putting yourself out there, and there are going to be idiots. Like, you have to expect it. If I have a day where I don't get a comment, I'm not like, that's a great day, it's a good day. So you do like have to come to expect it, and it's sad and it's wrong, but it's just, it's mainly Twitter is savage,
Isn't it? Yeah.
it's so savage. But like I say, all of anyone that's like, whether it's to you, to me, anyone that's like being negative, it honestly, all of it stems from jealousy and insecurity. So I have to feel sorry for it, and that's the kind of attitude I think you should have. It's the best ones out.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is where I always wish that I had like a nice switchboard with like sound effects, because I'd definitely be putting like a round of applause now. But I think no, you're absolutely bang on the money. You know, it's absolutely without a doubt it's Twitter. You know, I think, you know, even looking through the stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, they can completely disagree with your opinion. You know, and I'm absolutely all for that. You know, let's have a conversation, let's have a debate, let's disagree, and then we can laugh at it at the end. You know, that's the way in an ideal world it should be. But as you know, I don't have to tell you that's not the way it goes, especially on platforms like Twitter. But you know, I think it's so refreshing to hear someone who's still, you know, very early on in their career, although you, as you've said, you know, you've had a lot of opportunities. It's a year, as you've said, you know, and
Yeah.
I think if you are going to give up, it's probably going to be in the first few times that you do obviously have your clips posted on social media and you see the backlash and stuff like that. But I think ultimately, you know, you look up to people in the industry, you know, whether it's a Laura Woods in the world, or, you know, some people really love Simon Jordan at Talksport. You know, they're two very different people with very different opinions, but they'll both still get just as much as hate as each other for one reason or the other. So you just can't get away from it. But I think ultimately, as you say, you just have to remember why you first picked up a camera or a microphone. You know, it's at the end of the day something that you love doing. It's something that you really enjoy getting into. So if that's the be all and the end all, then nothing else really matters. It's all collateral damage, isn't it? But I think, you know, you've obviously touched on a lot of stuff there in terms of my next question, but I just want to ask you directly, in terms of advice. So for example, you know, you're a year into your incredible journey, which I'm sure is just going to go from strength to strength. But if you could give a bit of information to, for instance, the Hannah that started off, the day one Hannah, or anyone else who's, you know, aspiring to go into media, or even in a wider aspect, anyone who really wants to go for their goals and dreams, but they're just hesitant for one reason or the other, what kind of advice would you give, like I say, a younger version of you, or anyone out there trying to taste their dreams?
Yeah, it's, you know what, it's so simple. And again, I always know saying it is so much easier than actually doing it, because I would have loved to have started this 5 years ago, but it's the self-doubt that stopped me. So it's literally just do it. The hardest thing is to do is to start, like, you know, gaining a bit of an audience, like being patient and like getting your views up. It all does take time, but the longer you leave it, you're just prolonging that, basically. It sounds like so easy, but it's literally just a start. And the biggest thing I would say is, when you do start, if you do start, is be unapologetically yourself. Because God, I'm quite funny with like my Twitter. Like, I have like my TikTok clips, I have like my football opinions, I'm like live watching United when they're stressing me out. And sometimes I do things like, I'm very me, like I'm not going to change how I am for other people. And like, for example, like my Instagram is just all selfies. Like I'm a bit of a selfie kind of girl. Sometimes I will like post them on my Twitter. And I got a message last night, like, it was very suggestive. It was like, oh, you've posted a selfie. Can I ask like what kind of route you think that's going to take you down? Like, I know what you're suggesting to me, and I know what you're suggesting that you think that I'm going to do next, but like, this is my Twitter. Again, clicked on his profile. Oh yeah, you followed me for 5 years. So it's like, that's fine. Like, you can think that me posting a picture of myself is me being suggestive, but I'm just being myself. Like, I didn't have any content that day. I was like, I'm just gonna post a picture of me. And like, it's for me, I'll always be me. I want people to know what I look like, who I am as a person. Like, I bought a house in March, like I tweet sometimes about that. So for me, it's just, and some people won't like, that's fine. Some people will just want purely football content, and that's absolutely fine. I get it. And 99% of the time it is football, but I do want that like twist of having just a little bit of me on like my social media. So for me, like, people can say whatever they want. Like, you can imagine the comments and the messages I get, which is fine, but just be you. Because if you come on camera and you're a different person to how you are in real life, people's bullshit detectors go way up. Like, it's obvious. Like, I've met creators who seem so lovely on camera, and you meet them in person, it's like, wow, you're the most arrogant human being I've ever met in my life. So just be you, go for it, start it. Even if for like the first few months it took me ages to get, say, like 100 views on TikTok, but when you persist and people go on your page and they see you've been consistent, that's the biggest thing. So I know it's hard, and I know it's super scary to put yourself out there, but once you get a few negative comments and you'll be like, it'll be water off a duck's back. And you have to remember, these people aren't paying your bills, they're not like driving your life. Like, if you want to talk about football, talk about football. Do you know what I mean? It sounds easy. It sounds like easy advice, and I know it's easier said than done, but it's really, really simple in my opinion.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think what better way to end the podcast than that message there? I think, as you say, you're leading by example at the end of the day. As we know, it's a very saturated market in terms of a male dominated industry. And to see people like you really giving it a go, to see, backlash that you receive quite literally not even phasing you. As you say, everyone has their down days, of course they do, but for you to still be going and to have as much drive as you ever have, I think that's a massive testament to you. So a massive thank you to obviously yourself for joining me. I've really enjoyed this chat. Of course, it's always good to have a bit of therapy talking about Man United in these difficult times. But I
Thank you
think,
for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor. So thank you for having me.
no worries at all. Honestly, the pleasure is all mine, and I'm sure many people watching this will get just as much as I did out of this. So thank you so much. The very best of luck with your career, and let's hope if we do this again, it's when Man United have got a Premier League title. So, we're probably going to be grey and old by then, but we'll promise we'll do it one day again. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time.
Thanks, Anil.
And thank you, of course, to everyone who's watched today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, not only to the content, but of course, Hannah's stuff as well. She's got some amazing stuff across all platforms. So take your pick, whatever your preference is in terms of a social media, and enjoy all of the content. As I say, please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow for more content by The Content.